Well, students, now the third civilization, the third famous civilization of the world was the Chinese civilization. It is a special feature that all the ancient civilizations developed on the banks of the river. So the Chinese civilization, it was also developed on the banks of the river Huanghe. The Chinese civilization, but the river which led to the establishment of the Chinese civilization was known as the Chinese Sorrow. The civilization developed on the banks of the river called Huanghe River, but it is said that this river is known as the Chinese Sorrow. This was because after the flood of this river, when the flood comes to this river, it changed its course in an unpredictable manner. We cannot think, means it changes its course in an unpredictable manner because it destroys the agricultural land, it destroys the houses, it destroys the human settlements like the houses and their property. It would also render the canals useless. You know, the canals irrigation system also completely destroyed because of the unpredictable manner of the course of river Huanghe. So because of this reason, the people of that area referred it as a symbol of sorrow. So the people of that region called this river as a sorrow, or symbol of sorrow because it creates a sorrow, because it destroys the agricultural land, it destroys the human habitation areas, and it also destroys the irrigation system like the canals and wells. According to archaeological sources, archaeological evidences, the first ruling dynasty of the Chinese civilization was the Shang dynasty. That is Shang dynasty. Shang dynasty, it was the first ruling dynasty of the Chinese civilization. It ruled for in a period between 8th century BCE to 12th century BCE. 18th century BCE to 12th century BCE. It was a period of the Shang dynasty. Under the rule of this dynasty, the people had developed a wonderful culture. By 14th century BCE, the Shang dynasty was overpowered by the Zhou dynasty. It was overpowered by the Chang dynasty. So, after this dynasty, the Zhou dynasty came to the power. Because during this period, people developed their own culture and tradition, and it was the Shang dynasty was defeated by the Zhou dynasty. Zhou dynasty continued the good traditions, customs, religious practices, political system and social system of the Shang dynasty, and it ruled up to 250 BCE. Up to 250 BCE, the Zhou dynasty ruled over the Chinese civilization, and there was a section of officials in Zhou dynasty. There was a section of officials below the king, the section of officials who help the king in his administration. So the king allotted a piece of land, a portion of land to the officials in return to their service, because the officials, they completely assist the king in his administration. So in return of their service, king allotted a piece of land to all these officials. Means it reveals that during the Zhou dynasty there was a system of feudalism, because feudalism, there was a chain, that is king, below the kings there were the nobles and the tenants, and below them there were the tenant in serf or the slaves who look after the land of the landlords. Like this, during the Zhou dynasty, there was a system of the feudalism, because the king allotted a piece of land to the officials in return of their services. And below that there were the merchants. Below the officials there were the merchants, and the craftsmen were there, and apart from them we can find the great majority of the peasants. So the first strata was the officials, and below the officials there were the merchants and the craftsmen, and below the merchants and the craftsmen there were the great majority of the peasants, and the lowest level of the lowest strata of the social hierarchy were the slaves. The lowest strata of the society, the lowest level of the society consisted of the slaves. The prisoners of the war were considered as the slaves by the king. The prisoners of the war who were kept in the jail, they were considered as a slave, and these slaves were forced to work only in the lands of the landlords, and they were also forced to in the plantations like rubber plantation, tea plantations and coffee plantations. So the prisoners of the war were considered as slaves. Now the Shang dynasty spent most of its time only in the conquest and the battles. Shang dynasty, after the Chow dynasty, here the Shang dynasty, it spent most of its time only for the conquest, conquering the neighboring areas, and it spent its money and time only in the battles, and it gave importance to the army, it gave importance to the defense force. The soldier enjoyed a dignified status in the society. They have enjoyed, they have a dignified status in the society. All gave respect and honor to the soldiers. Here the soldiers wore bronze helmets and metal which have been found at the time of the excavation. The people of the Shang dynasty depend on agriculture. For their livelihood, they depend on the agriculture. They had a well organized system of irrigation, and they used to grow a plenty of rice. So the rice, they used to grow a plenty of rice. Abundant rice was grown at the time of Shang dynasty. The Chinese used to wear the thin cotton dress. They used to silk also and engaged in silkworm rearing, because they used thin silk clothes. They also wore the silk clothes, and some common people, they wore the thin cotton dress. So that time they know about the silkworm rearing. The silk manufacturing was the prominent industry during that time. The Chinese used to make excellent pots and had learnt to make various objects from the porcelain. From the porcelain they they manufactured the various objects. It was the custom of the Chinese to worship their ancestors, and about their religion they began to worship. It was the custom, it was the tradition of the Chinese to worship their ancestors. They believed that dead man became a spirit of the dead man became the spirit, and that spirit had a more and more power. So they gave more importance to the dead man, because he became the spirit, and that spirit had a more power, it had a special powers. The dead body was buried along with various wooden articles, pots, bronze vessels and other objects. The daily use were kept along with the dead body, and they were also buried with the dead body. the tombs of the king used to be quite large. The tombs of the king, the grave of the king was a very big in size, because all the items which were used by the king, these all items were kept in that tomb. Therefore, they construct huge tombs. When the king dies, to bury the king, they construct the big tombs. Means in that tomb they kept the equipments, war equipments, and the items used by the king. The Chinese tradition of writing began with the pictures and got transformed into ideographic script. It was transformed, means they followed the writing in a picture form, in a pictorial or the picture form, and it was transformed into ideographic script. Writers used to write on skill-lined bamboo slips. They used the silk and bamboo slips to write their articles. Then the porcelain and Great Wall are the exceptional contributions of this civilization. You know, the kings used to construct wall, because Chinese empire consisted of many small provinces. So to protect all these provinces, they constructed a big here 7 big states were created. You know, many provinces were there, and all these were united, and only 7 big states were created. And to protect all these 7 states, they constructed a wall all around the 7 states. And the construction of these walls started during the 7th century BCE and continued till 16th century BCE. The worn out parts of repaired and strengthened. Today, the worn out parts of the big great walls of China was repaired and it is strengthened. When the work was completed, it stretched to more than 5,000 kilometers. Its length is about 5,000 kilometers, and it is also one of the wonders of the world. You know, today 7 wonders of the world are there, and it is also the Great Wall of China. It is also one of the 7 wonders of the world. So these are the 3 important civilizations of the world. The first one is the Egyptian civilization, second one is the Mesopotamian civilization, and third one is the Chinese civilization. So you have to read all these civilizations properly and answer the questions given in the textbooks. Thank you, students.